Welcome to the breakdown, brought to you by PaintballAccess.com. I'm Matty Marshall here with Todd Martinez, and we would like to congratulate Dynasty. San Diego Dynasty won the 2013 series title in the PSP Champions Division. That is the hardest thing to do in professional paintball. It's hard. I don't care what measure of greatness you want to try to achieve. You want to set the bar super high for yourself. Be on a team that wins a series title in the PSP Champions Division. Incredibly hard. You've been on one of those teams. I've been through that war myself. It is incredibly hard to do. So, you know, let's talk about how awesome San Diego Dynasty's year was. Now, particularly more so towards the beginning of the year, because as the year progressed, the last two tournaments, they kind of sputtered a little bit. We'll get to that in a second. What do you think, Todd?
Well, Dynasty really came in at the beginning of this year, hitting hard, firing on all cylinders. Everything was just going for Dynasty. New sponsorship, new pickups. You know, they picked up Spica, Brandon Short, Blake Yarber came in late in at the end of the season before. They're really high on everything that they were doing. So I feel like Dynasty really came in and just hit the gas right away, and that was really the thing that really propelled them into those first two wins at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I mean, they came into Dallas definitely, and also it definitely helps, and this is no excuse or explanation really, but it's definitely part of the equation, is that, you know, Dynasty's from Southern California, so they do have the ability to get a little bit better practices in the early part of the year, which is going to give them a slight advantage over teams like, say, Upton 187 crew, who live in a snow-locked state, essentially, in the winter. But still, Dynasty, they came into the beginning part of the year, they won Dallas, they won the second event at the Mid-Atlantic Open, and then they took second at Chicago. So first and a second, I mean, that is just an astounding performance from them. And they only lost one game in two tournaments for the first two events.
Well, it's so hard just to make top four now with the Champions and Challengers division, the way that it breaks down. Because pretty much to go into the top four, you have to go 3-1 throughout the prelims. So not only did they make it to the top four, the first three events, they made it to the finals, beating really good teams like Damage, Heat, and Impact to get there. Mm-hmm. And I really felt like Dynasty, just the way that they came out in the first half of the season, just, you know, all the energy that they had, they put forth, you know, really propelled them just to play hard, play on the same level. Those first couple field layouts also really played well for Dynasty. I felt like what they did really well was just play good, smart, controlled paintball. They played, all the guys were staying alive, shooting tons of paint, not making silly moves, communicating. You know, that's the recipe for winning tournaments. You know, they had Rusty Glaze come in as their coach, and I thought that he really did a good job of harnessing the talent that he had and getting those players just to play to their potential.
Well, they did an amazing job of reforming their work ethic, and, you know, Dynasty's always been a pretty solid team as far as practice is concerned, but, you know, having Rusty Glaze come in, I mean, Rusty came in and they run specific drills, they have a specific regimen, and he was kind of, you know, getting at me a little bit in the beginning of the year because the Ironmen were practicing so hard. So I was listening to all these different reports come in from the practices, and I was like, oh, the Ironmen look like they're the hardest working team in paintball right now. And other than maybe, say, the Russians, who actually, that's their profession. They literally just play paintball and train 5 days a week. But other than that, I was impressed by how much the Ironmen had been practicing. And then, you know, the Dynasty guys were writing me like, if you came to one of our practices, you see how tough our practices are. And so they had worked so hard to try to make sure to cultivate the talent that they had do an extra really specific job of making sure that every I was dotted, every T was crossed, that when they went to the tournaments that they were scouting games, watching the webcast, making sure that they knew what was happening out there on the field, and you could see it. I mean, only losing one game, and the only game they lost in the first 2 events was the Houston Heat in event number 1 in Dallas, is incredibly impressive. And you know, you watch the highlights from the game in the semifinals in Dallas against Los Angeles Infamous, where Tyler Harmon and Kyle Spica just had a game. Oliver Lang runs through, Spica's going up the snake, and then Tyler Harmon runs and dives and just literally, and when we say dives and shoots somebody, I mean he was full, laid out completely in a Superman dive, and got the shot on the back corner bunker when he did it. It was incredibly impressive, but it's guys like Kyle Spica and Tyler Harmon, guys that are not the core members of that team, but have been embraced by the core members of Dynasty, and really let them do what they need to do. You know, it's kind of like when you got a kid. It's like, well, at a certain point, you got to kick them off the ledge and see if they can fly. Tyler Harmon could definitely fly for sure, because you know it was very impressive to see guys like Spica and Tyler Harmon finally really transcend and blossom into the paintball players that we see him now.
Well, when you have guys like that strong core that Dynasty does, Oliver Lang, Ryan Greenspan, Yosh Rao, Alex Fraige, the 4 guys that have been there since the inception of Dynasty. Those are the guys that really came this year and decided that they were going to have great years. Because those first couple tournaments when Dynasty was winning, it was Oliver Lang and Alex Fraige and Yosh Rao, you know, and Ryan Greenspan pulling out magic to win points for these guys. Because it's not like they were blowing people out. The couple games there were blowouts, but there were some good games. They played some good teams. But the way that those guys played, just being solid, being consistent, and playing the way that those guys can play, that's what allows Kyle Spica, Tyler Harmon, Blake Yarber, Dalton Vanderbilt just to get out there and play their game. And by those guys feeling comfortable, feeling like they're part of the team and that what they do is important, those guys just running to the front and going and killing people, that also, you know, conversely just lets Oliver Lang and Ryan Greenspan go and you know, do their thing.
Well, another thing too is that they're getting reps. Rusty Glaze, the coach of the team, has done a great job of making sure everyone gets their reps. And paintball in a very real sense has gone to a starting 5 rotation. I mean, you look at Houston Heat in their dominant year 2012, and then in 2013 they did win Chicago, and the Dynasty lost to Houston Heat. But if you look at the points played, if you go to paintballaccess.com and check out the statistics on the points played, Heat was not spreading those spins around as much as Rusty Glaze was. You know, Jason Trozen was like, look, man, I got these studs, and I'm going to run these dudes until the wheels fall off. And even though he's surrounded by talented paintball players, and he believed in those guys too, and those guys stepped up for him when he put him in there. But you can't really argue with the logic that he was going with. Rusty Glaze, on the other hand, was like, you know what, I got all these guys, and I'm going to get them spins so that they're fresh and they're so my stars are fresh. Because when you look at the points that Oliver Lang played, that Ryan Greenspan played, they're not playing the points that say Archie Montemayor or Damian Ryan are playing for. You know, Archie played over 200 points. Damian Ryan only sat 7 points this whole season playing for Infamous, and Archie on the World Championship team that they won the World Cup San Antonio X Factor. But those guys are out there all the time. I mean, they're always getting reps, not getting much rest, whereas Dynasty was definitely spreading all those spins around. So there's something to be said about that too. It definitely worked for them in the beginning. But let's talk about those later events. As awesome as Dynasty was in the first couple events, the first 2 events, and then taking the second place at the 3rd event, heading into that 4th and 5th event, they took 5th at both of those. But man, they did not have a good World Cup. In fact, they got beat 7-0 against the Ironman, and I'm sorry, 7-0 against Houston Heat, and then 4-0 against the Ironman. 2 shutouts in one tournament. They went 2-2 in the prelims, ended up taking 5th. But that was the kind of speechless to try to describe exactly what happened. I think it had a little bit to do with the strategy, definitely some execution as well. But heading into World Cup, Dynasty hadn't been skunked once.
No.
And then they get skunked twice at World Cup. Yeah. So they're going to have some questions that they need to talk about in the offseason for sure.
Well, I honestly feel like it was a matter of the field and the technique. You know, as good of a job as the players did and the coach did in the beginning of the season in playing to their players' strengths and playing to the how the field played in Dallas and at MAO, I really felt like they did that way better than anybody else. And then a little bit of magic, you know, put them over the edge to be able to beat Infamous and, you know, come through and win those tournaments. And then just really playing hard and playing well in Chicago got them all the way to the finals. They just ran into a determined Houston Heat team. But I really felt like at the 4th and 5th event, you know, and especially at World Cup, you know, losing those games, not scoring a point, I really felt like they just didn't adapt fast enough. You know, those other teams, like you saw Houston Heat, the way they played day 1, day 2, and day 3 were 3 different teams.
Well, I didn't like, to be honest, I didn't like the strategy that Dynasty had for World Cup.
Exactly.
I didn't think that smart, slow play.
It wasn't aggressive enough.
Well, exactly. It wasn't aggressive enough because if you look at the teams that did well at the World Cup, the Impacts, the San Antonio X Factors who won the event, those teams, they had the ability, that chameleon-like ability to be able to play aggressive in inner point. I'm talking about in the middle of a point, seize the situation, but not be so set on this, you know, on their game plans they couldn't switch things up. So I think that had a lot to do with the field. And you know, when you hear Dynasty, even in their wins, they were like, oh, you know, we're playing this field plays slow. We're going to play it slow. We're going to play it smart. We're going to play it slow. And I you know, I don't think that worked when they, you know, went against teams like the Ironmen and Houston Heat. Obviously, I mean, they didn't put 1 point on the board against either one of those teams at the most important event of the year. Now, again, they did win the series title, so I don't want to beat them up too bad. But that being said, it's one of those cliches in paintball or in sports in general. You're only as good as your last event. And at the last event, yes, they did take 5th out of 10 teams in the Champions Division, and they did secure themselves a series title. But for Dynasty, to get skunked by 2 big teams like that, I guarantee you Rusty Glaze is going to be breaking those games down and figuring out exactly what went wrong. So when they head into 2014, that they will be better off in a better situation. So before we sign off here, let's talk about the top 5 players statistically for San Diego Dynasty in this HK Army Spotlight. So the top 5 players, highest ranked players for San Diego Dynasty. Number 1, Oliver Lang, won the Top Gun title, and did so playing a little over half of the points. You know, not getting a ton of spins. Ryan Greenspan, number 8. Ryan Greenspan, such a solid competitor. I mean, you hear so many people talk about how they think he's the best player in paintball. And then you got number 11, Kyle Spica, number 16, Glenn Takamoto, and number 23, Blake Yarber. What do you think about those guys, Todd?
Honestly, you go back and watch the breakouts, I was calling Oliver Lang's name all season.
You were. You definitely were.
I'm telling you, Oliver Lang, whenever he wants to be, he's the best player in the world. But he came in this season. He played hard. He played tough. When he did play, you know, a little bit more than half the points, he got in there and did his thing. You know, he's a stud. He's a star. You know, if I'm coaching Dynasty, I'm probably playing him every game, but I'm not the coach of Dynasty, you know. So, you know, but he did get in there. He did work. And, you know, at the very end of the season, he was able to sneak into that top spot. And, you know, when you watch all season and then you see it happen, you know, it's not really that surprising. That dude can flat out play paintball. Things haven't changed in over 10 years. And, you know, he's well-deserved to take that #1 spot. Ryan Greenspan finishing number 8, right behind Oliver. Everybody knows that Ryan's a stud. You know, he played sick all season long. He's always one of those dudes that you can count on to shoot somebody on the break, talk, be alive in low-body situations, and really just get his team going.
Well, the thing with Ryan is that he's a natural, man. You know, he gets frustrated with the team sometimes just because they don't have the ability to see the game the way that he does. You know, I mean, he just is that good at the game, and he proves it time and time again. So, yeah, he's probably going to be frustrated with the 8th ranking, to be honest. And him and Oliver always have this, you know, buddy, you know, intense rivalry that goes on between the two of them. But, man, you want to talk about a guy that is literally on the on-field core of Dynasty, it's Ryan Greenspan. I mean, that guy can play any position. He could, when he goes up in front, he murders people. And when he plays in the back, he holds it down. He can play the 2. That is his main position. He plays the 2 better than probably anybody plays the 2, with maybe a few exceptions given the day. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes. But also, you know, hey, Kyle Spica and Blake Yarber making the top 5 for Dynasty on the stats rankings is pretty awesome.
Over Alex Frage and Dalton Vanderbilt, who are the ones on the other sides.
Yeah.
You know, like when you have your ones, 2 of your ones be, because Ryan Greenspan, Oliver Lang, you know, played a lot of that 3 position this season, you know, or the 2 position, and then shooting a guy and then making their way up. But, you know, to have, you know, Blake Yarber and Kyle Spica, you know, 2 of your ones be the top 5 guys on their team, that means they're getting up into their spots being alive and getting kills. So, you know, excellent for Dynasty because they still do have Alex Frazier and Dalton Vanderbilt, who are stone cold killers, to be able to have 2 new guys come in and have 2 solid ones on both sides of the field.
Dynasty, and you know, I know that they didn't have great events at the last 2 events, but when you start breaking down their roster and you start really looking at the guys that they have and what they're doing out there, the coaching they have, the support that they have, Dynasty is going to be a force for a while to come, and they are instantly a favorite to win any event that they, you know, of all 5 events that are going to take place next year. And also, got to give a shout out to Glenn Takamoto, who's just such a solid rock for that team. And yeah, Dynasty looks strong, man. Don't sleep ever on San Diego Dynasty in 2014. Thank you guys here for tuning in to the breakdown. I'm Matty Marshall. But before we go, what do you think? Rusty Glaze Coach of the Year? I don't know. I think he's got a legit shot at Coach of the Year. 3 finals, 2 first places in a series title. 2nd year coaching for the team, 1.5 years.
We shall see.
Yeah, we shall see. So, yeah, but congratulations, San Diego Dynasty Series champs 2014, Champions Division in the PSP. Matty Marshall with Todd Martinez. We'll see you next time.
How many countries I've visited, how many miles you've traveled,
how many paintballs you've shot at different people,
how much baby powder I've used, how many hotels we've trashed,
how many places I've driven,
how many guns I've gone through, how much I love the game.
It's all the times that you had to tell your family that you couldn't be there for this or that because you were going to play paintball.
How many friends I've gotten out of it.
That's just why I love paintball.
That's why I love paintball.
That's why I love paintball. But that's why I love paintball.
There are massive opportunities, both with the sport of paintball and for your business. If we are successful in taking our sport to another level, unite with Paintball Access in our quest to elevate paintball and broadcast it to the world. There are advertising packages available for any size business. Join us. Advertise with PBA and help us change the sport for the better forever.